Okay, I think we'll get started here. Thanks very much for joining us tonight. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Chris Schieffer. I'm a teacher at Jack London Middle School. I've been teaching there almost 25 years, and I am the tour moderator for Jack London, which means I kind of promote the trip, I kind of run the trip, get the kids signed up, find the chaperones, and I kind of am in charge of the London side of it. This will be my 15th to 20th trip. I stopped counting. I started going back in 2007. Um, the other tour moderators that I'll put up at the end at Cooper is Mrs. Schneider, and she's been on over 20 trips, and her role is the same as mine, but for the Cooper students. And finally, Mr. Peterson, he's over at Holmes, and he's been on the most trips of all of us. I think he's up to 30 trips. So the one thing that we like to promote is that the tour moderators who also travel on the trip collectively have gone to Washington, D.C. 60 or 70 times. So we know the ins and outs of how to manage a large group of eighth graders successfully through the nation's capital. If you have a trip at another school, there might be a teacher who's never been to Washington, D.C. who's in charge of the trip. Well, we like to kind of promote that. We have lots of experience. So we'll talk more about that. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about why we do an eighth grade trip to Washington, D.C. each year. And some of you may have as well. I went on my eighth grade Washington, D.C. trip when I was an eighth grader as well. A lot of parents tell me they went on their trip as well. This year or next year, the students will be studying the different forms of government. So there's a lot of curricular connections there. There's a unit in social studies on conflicts. They learn about the different wars. We go to lots of the monuments and museums that talk a lot about these wars. There's a big unit on the Holocaust in fourth and eighth grade, and one of our most powerful stops is at the National Holocaust Museum, and also the branches of government and the Constitution. They learn about the Constitution in eighth grade. They take the Constitution test. They learn about the Houses of Congress, and we actually go and see the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution on our trip at the National Archives. Those are some of the curricular connections that we have in seventh and eighth grade. Here's what our trip includes. So once you pay for the trip, there's nothing else to pay for. It includes all the hotel accommodations. I'll be specific about the hotel that we stay at. Transportation to and from our destination and throughout the trip. We take a direct flight to DC early morning, and we take a direct flight back. Some schools try to do save a little money with like a one-stop flight, but we decided that direct flights maximize our time and maximize our value. It's a little easier to go direct. All the meals are included. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, except for the first day. First day when we go to the airport, that meal is not included. All attractions, activities, so tickets to the museums, tickets to any Mount Vernon, the donations that we make to some stops that accept donations for groups. All of those are included as well, so there's nothing that your child needs to pay for. We also have a tour leader, somebody who's like on the ground in DC who organizes everything, who's there as well, and our tour guide, our bus driver tour guides. Every one of our buses has a great tour guides. I request the same guys every year, and I always get my request. So we'll be looking forward to having some great tour guides as well. And then also the safety, insurance, and support that we have. We have security guards at the hotel. We have chaperones that know the kids. So all of that is included as well. Now for the fun part. Here are the fun things that we'll be doing in Washington, D.C. One of our most powerful stops is at Arlington National Cemetery. We get to honor the fallen soldiers of America's wars, and we also participate in a ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. We lay a wreath representing our three schools to thank the soldiers who have died for our country, and it's a very memorable and powerful moment. Those of you who went on your own DC trip, a lot of people remember vividly the Army 3rd Infantry guarding the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier 24 hours a day. We are honored to lay a wreath there. We'll visit the Marine Corps Memorial, which is also known as the Iwo Jima Memorial. Also, as part of our curricular connections, we visit the branches of government. We visit the Capitol, we visit the Supreme Court, we visit the Library of Congress. Those are two of the three branches, but those are all kind of right next to each other across the street. So that's why I grouped them together. We get a nice guided tour of the Capitol with audio headsets. We see the rotunda, we see the old House of Representatives. Sometimes we see the new House of Representatives. We learn a lot about the history of the Capitol was built and the branches of government. Another great stop, we drive out to Mount Vernon, which was George Washington's home when he, before and after he became president. It's a giant farm plantation that has animals. It has an old blacksmith shop. It has a carriage house. It has an old kitchen. Get to see the old mansion, and has lots of the same fixtures from the 1800s. We also visit the tomb of President Washington and Mrs. Washington. And they've upgraded it with some cool exhibits, like one 4D movie that we get to see, and another exhibit where you get to act as a member of Congress and make decisions about the founding of the country. You get to kind of act like a founding father, and it's a digital interactive exhibit that's really outstanding. So this is a really great highlight of one of our days. We usually book this the day we also do the Arlington Cemetery. A lot of the memorials that we get to see are some great picture stops, and we learn about the presidents. We learn about the important people in our country, the Jefferson Memorial right on the reflecting pool. Sometimes we get lucky and we get to see the cherry blossoms starting to blossom. The Lincoln Memorial as well. Kids like to see that. That's where Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech. They'll learn a lot about that in 8th grade. We also see one of the newest monuments, the MLK Jr. Memorial as well. Some of the cool stops include the Smithsonian Museums. We get to go to the Natural History Museum. That's where they filmed Night at the Museum, and get to see the Hope Diamond, and you get to see all the dinosaurs and the woolly mammoth and all that good stuff. We also, they just reopened the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum on the mall, so you get to see the lunar lander, some of the aircraft, and Spirit of St. Louis, and some of the old planes, and there's a lot of hands-on exhibits there. Another new memorial is the World War II Memorial. We learn a little bit about the men and women who died in World War II and served our country. The third branch of the government we visit is the White House, the executive branch, as well as the Korean, Vietnam, and memorials of Washington Monument. There's the reflecting pool there as well. All stops that we make and learn about different conflicts that our country is in and how we honor our fallen soldiers. We visit the National Archives. That's where we get to see the Constitution. We see the Declaration of Independence, the Magna Carta, all the founding documents. And yes, if you've seen the movie, it is sealed in bulletproof glass, and they lower it into a vault in the floor every night, and it's 2 armed guards with giant machine guns guarding it whenever it's not underground in the vault. The FDR Memorial is another new memorial that's really cool and interactive, and you know about FDR. He was the last president to serve more than 2 terms. He served 4 terms, and there's 4 little rooms in his memorial, outdoor rooms that talk about his 4 terms. Another couple somber stops we make is one is at the Pentagon 9/11 Memorial. Last time we were there last year, we were walking through, and there was a man passing out some flyers, and he actually was working at the Pentagon the day that the planes hit the Pentagon. And I had never spoken to anybody who had firsthand experience of it, and so our entire group gathered around, heard his story firsthand, and it was an incredibly powerful moment in our trip that I'll never forget. Also, the National Holocaust Museum. I've been to the Holocaust Museum in Skokie, and it's very good, but this museum is really one of the best representations to explain the Holocaust to people who may not understand the gravity of it. There's also a children's area that they have for the Holocaust that's a little bit more tailored to younger children, but by the time they're in 8th grade, they learn about the Holocaust. And, we want to see the exhibits firsthand and to learn about the horrors of the Holocaust. So it's a very, very powerful visit for most, for our kids in our tour. We also do other stops that I haven't added. There's some little surprise stops that we throw in here or there. Sometimes we might hop off, and in the past we've gone and seen the pandas at the zoo. I think the pandas went back to China though, so I'm going to do that. We visit the Einstein Memorial. There's lots of different little things that Mr. Peterson, Ms. Schneider, and I know about that if we have an extra 30 minutes on our trip, we'll run and go to. One other thing that I want to mention is as experienced guides, we know exactly the attention span that an 8th grader will have at some of these sites. Whereas some schools will stay for 5 days and they'll give them 4 hours to go to the Air and Space Museum. While I might be able to stay at the Air and Space Museum for 4 hours and read everything and do every activity and see every airplane, most eighth graders feel that an hour and 90 minutes is enough. And so we make sure that our itinerary is very full, but we go and see everything. So we call this the little sampler tour, so that someday when eighth graders come back, maybe perhaps with their family or their own family, they'll come back and see and stay as long as they'd like and be able to get an idea of what they enjoyed to see. I'll talk a little bit more about some details from our trip. I already mentioned our flights. We fly United or American, and we nonstop from O'Hare. The drop off for the flights is at Luna Middle School. It's kind of our central location for the district. And so you'll drop your kids off for London. We'll take a coach bus over to the airport. We'll get them through security. We'll get them to the gates. We'll have some breakfast, and then we'll fly over to DC. On the way home, we'll fly back. We'll take a coach bus back to London. So you're going to pick your kid back up at London Middle School. No need to go to the airport at all. The hotel we stay at is the Spring Hill Suites in Reston. Reston is kind of a little suburb outside of DC. It's about 20 minutes out, which is good because it's a little more affordable and it's a little quieter. And we spend most of our day touring, so we don't have a lot of downtime at the hotel. In fact, the first day we probably don't get to the hotel till 9 or 10 p.m., and that's when we first check in. We like this hotel because its rooms are very clean and spacious. It's got sleeping space for everybody. There are 4 sleeping spaces for everybody. And you'll note my note there is that students select their own roommates. Some trips might say, here, you're sharing a room with these kids. We let the kids pick their own roommates, make those decisions about November before the trip. So if you're signing up for the trip, kids like to sign up with a friend or get a group of 3 or 4. There are 4 to a room. It's possible if you want fewer than 4 people to a room, you can pay an upcharge, but most kids go to 4 to a room, and there's plenty of room in those rooms. They recently upgraded the rooms, and so they're real nice and modern and sleeping room for everybody. They have a really nice breakfast in the morning, the waffle maker and bacon and sausage and all that kind of stuff. So we really like staying there. And we leave early in the morning and get on our tours. So we don't have a lot of downtime at our hotel. As far as other meals, the breakfast meals are at the hotel. At lunch, we give the kids meal money. Last year, we gave them $15 cash. I think this year they're going to get kind of like a prepaid card that they can use anywhere. We do that, and we hold that for the kids because we don't want kids to lose it, and we want to make sure everybody has money when they go to lunch. The only other money that some people send is for souvenirs for their kids to buy some things to remember their trip. There's absolutely no money needed to be sent on the trip because we provide their meal money for lunch. We often go to a food court that has, Panda Express and Shake Shack and all the Kong Dog is a new one that we saw there this year. Lots of good places, Subway, McDonald's, all the restaurants that the kids like, and they get to choose what they want. For dinner, we do something a little more formal. We go to a restaurant like the San Antonio Grill, Buca de Beppo. Blackfin is like an American restaurant with burgers and chicken fingers and stuff. And the kids kind of sit down and they get their soft drinks, they get all desserts, and it's a little bit of fun to sit down and have a meal with our group. So all those meals are included in the price of the trip as well. I mentioned the transportation. All you need to do is drop off and pick up at London Middle School. And for those of you who register for the trip, we'll have a pre-trip meeting a couple weeks before the trip. Our trip is in mid-February over President's Day weekend. We'll have a meeting probably 2 weeks before to learn about what to pack and finalize our itinerary and all that kind of stuff. The chaperones on this trip are teachers, and that's another great thing about our trip is we really like to have teachers go because the teachers know all these kids and the kids know the teachers. We can trust that they're going to be good chaperones and the kids know them. So if there's any issues or questions, they can ask the teachers that they might have in class. So a lot of parents like to volunteer to chaperone, but we've never had a problem filling our chaperones with teachers. I have a list of teachers who would love to go on the trip, and every year I just pick the next ones on the list. So if you are a 7th grader and you know a 7th or 8th grade teacher or even a 6th grade teacher that you'd like to go on the trip, mention it to them and they can get on the list. And then finally, just one more note. Students don't need any passports or ID to travel on our tour group. They're going to get a lanyard that has a badge on it with their name and our tour group name, and that's what they need to identify themselves at the airport. That lanyard also has an emergency number. If for any reason they get separated from our group or something happens, they can call that number, and then they'll get in contact immediately with World Strides, our tour company, and they'll get in contact with me or one of the other chaperones to take care of any issues. It's very, very rare that that phone number is ever needed, but it's a nice safety issue that's in case anything ever comes up. The other details of our trip, this year we're going February 17th through 19th. That's over President's Day weekend. It's a 3-day weekend, so students don't miss any school. The price is $1,500 per student, but the payments for that starts with a deposit of $115. And then I believe there's a monthly payment that you can make of around $200. So some people like to pay that price right away. Some people like to do the monthly installments. That's totally up to you. Okay. There's a registration deadline. We don't have a deadline. The deadline, we've never had to worry about it because our trip fills up. But the deadlines are our wait lists. When we get to 50 paid students, and right now we're at 25, and that's quite a lot for kids not even being in 8th grade yet, because we're just kind of promoting this starting the last couple of weeks. But once we get to 50 students, we start a wait list. And we, once that wait list gets enough students to add a coach bus in Washington, D.C., and we have enough plane tickets, then we'll release another set of 50. So we always register in groups of 50. Last year, we had 107 students register, but we were only able to accommodate 101 because we didn't have bus or plane space. So I highly encourage you, if you're on the fence considering, make sure you sign up early, because once we're waitlisted, there will be a wait list, and we'll send that out. I expect for our 50-person wait list to be full by summer break. Okay, so last year we had 50 by summer break, and it wasn't until about October where we were able to register about 40 more, where we were able to release another bus and get those 90 students on, and then we only had 11 spots left, and those booked up. Like I said, 6 students registered after we had 101, which was our max, and they were unable to travel, unfortunately. When you go to the website to register, and I'll put all that info up here on the slide shortly, it's also on the letter that came home. That's the web code that you needed. That's that 8-letter or that 7-letter code you need to type in, and that will be our trip. The other thing that you can do is optional refund program. For $197 on top of the cost of the trip, you can add in insurance, and that trip insurance can be used for any reason. If you're a week before the trip, you change your mind and say, yeah, no, we're actually going to go on another trip somewhere else this weekend, you can get your refund. If your great Aunt Gertrude dies 2 nights before the trip and you need to go to her service, then you can get your refund. If your child gets the flu and you don't want to send them on the trip, which I hope that somebody with a flu wouldn't go on the trip, but you can get a refund for that for any reason. I've had people cancel at 4 a.m. They woke up with the ill, and they called, canceled, and our flight was at 7 o'clock. They canceled at 4 a.m. and they got a full refund. So that's up to you. Some parents are, you know what, you're going no matter what, and I'm not doing the insurance, and that's okay too. I just wanted people to be aware that that's another option if they choose. There's also some information about financial assistance. I don't have a lot of info on this, but you can find this on World Strides. So if you have a certain adjusted gross income, or if you're a military, first responder, educator family, it looks like they have some applications for aid or some discounts. And so that if you're a teacher or a child of an educator, you can apply for that. That's all through World Strides. Mr. Schneider, Mr. Peterson, and I don't have anything to do with registration. And so any registration questions, we usually send you off to the company World Stride to take care of that. But I wanted people to be aware of that as well. Okay. And here's all the basic information that you would need to sign up. The website there is spark.worldstrides.com. The tour code is right there. There's a phone number you can call in case you need help registering. And then that email, 8th grade Washington, D.C. @gmail.com, goes right to me, Mr. Schiefer. And there's our tour moderators at the 3 schools as well. Okay. So I think that's all I have for our presentation. Mr. Schneider, I know you're here, and if I missed something, let me know. I'm not sure if I can unmute you, but you can type it in the chat. If you as a parent have any other questions and want to type it in the chat, I'll sit here for a couple more minutes and check the chat. But otherwise, I want to thank you very much for coming. If you have any other questions, please email me or have your child come up to me in London, and I'm happy to talk to them. Um, but otherwise, I appreciate you coming tonight. I'm sorry, I know there was a band concert and there was a musical, and it's really hard to book things in May. So just remind your friends if they couldn't make it, I'm going to upload this to YouTube, and they should be able to find a copy of this if they search the right things on YouTube, like eighth grade London Cooper Holmes Washington D.C. trip, something like that. They should be able to find it. Great. Thanks very much, everybody, and have a great week. Okay. We don't know the time the flights are yet. Uh, we actually, I think, do, but a lot of times they change this far out, but only by like 15 minutes. Usually we take like a flight that's around 7 or 7:30 a.m. That's our outbound flight. And then our return flights are usually around after dinner time. Yeah, what happens if somebody falls ill one day? We have enough chaperones, and that's actually happened. We have enough chaperones where if a chaperone needs to stay back with them, we also have the person who, from Bright Spark, but we wouldn't leave the child who's ill with somebody they don't know. So we have enough chaperones. We kind of overbook our chaperones if they need to stay with a child or get them medical care or go to a doctor that they can be with a student. Okay, we had a situation last year where somebody missed the flight, and I waited at the airport in DC for that student while the other chaperones went on the tour, and then we were able to reunite with that student. You're welcome. If there's any other questions, go ahead and add them to the chat. Hi, Ms. Schneider. Um, Extra money is cash or card better? You have to decide what you want to send your child with. We talk a lot about safety as far as handling cash or handling a debit card. Some parents like to send like a prepaid debit card. If you send your own debit card, well, that's up to you. That's your own risk. um, but the one thing Mr. Peterson always says is whatever money you send, do not expect any change. So if you send $80 and say, give me the change, you will not see any of that change. That's one thing that we will almost guarantee. Okay. Um, Okay, let me look into that. I've heard that happen before, but there are people who have signed up. So let me check on that. Like the area you're type into, meaning the tour code, right? I've heard that before. Let's see what happens here. This is another website. Bright Spark Travel is our kind of the subsidiary that got acquired by World Strides that we work with. I think that's another registration link that will work. You can try that as well. That's a good question about insurance. I believe I've answered. Somebody's asked this question before. I believe it's something like you have like 2 weeks, but I, I don't want to be 100% on that. I can look that up for you. But after you register, you have like 2 weeks to add it or not. Okay. They don't want somebody, registering and then months later adding it on. So if you want specifics on that, I'm happy to. If you email me, I'm happy to answer specifics on that. But it's something like you've got 2 weeks after you register to add it on. Let's see. Here's the site that I sent to the parent who asked the question. This is another link for registration for Bright Spark, which is a subsidiary of World Strides. I will contact the tech department. Sometimes they have to open up. I hope we're not waitlisted, but I don't think we are because I checked this morning. We're at 25. So I know people are able to set up. Yes, illness medical insurance is covered in your payments. When you register, you'll get some info about that. A lot of we ask that when you register, our pre-trip that you also include your own personal child health care, health insurance for certain reasons. I believe there's some sort of liability insurance that's included in the price of your trip. I'm not sure if it's illness medical insurance, but there is liability insurance built in. Welcome. All right. I think our meeting is, for some reason the link doesn't. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Ha. Yeah, no, that's a great question. What happens if it snows and the flight is canceled? We've seen it all. We've been one morning, and I remember it was Valentine's Day morning. Our flight got delayed and then it got canceled. Something about the flight crew didn't make it to Chicago or something. They rebooked our entire trip one day later. This was on the 4-day weekend. We've also discussed rebooking it for Memorial Day, stuff like that. But World Strides is the largest tour company, so they have lots of power as far as booking travel. So any issues that come up with that are always resolved to my satisfaction about canceled flights. And sometimes we'll get stuck in DC. If there's a blizzard in Chicago and kids are in DC, World Strides just rebooks the hotels and flights for the next night at no charge. They cover all the costs of rebooking hotels and flights for groups that get stuck in Chicago. I think Mr. Schneider's flight got diverted to St. Louis once, right? But they made it in. She doesn't like to talk much about that. I want to remind her of that. It's a little bit adventurous, but yeah. Sorry about the registration here. I'm going to drop in some links. Spark.worldstrides.com was working for me. I'm not sure why it was grayed out, but I can try dropping this link. This is how I log in for registration. Zoom's going to kick us out in about 6 minutes. So if there's any other questions, please type them in now, and I'm happy to answer them. And if not, then thanks again for coming, and you can drop out, and we'll start. We'll end this meeting in a couple minutes here. Okay. Well, I don't see any new messages, so thanks again, everybody. And if you have any trouble with registering, go ahead and send me that email, and I'll make sure I get that resolved and get everybody registered. So thanks for hopefully signing your kids up, and we're looking forward to another great trip. Good night.